Hi, I'm Lisa MacLeod. Welcome to this week's edition of Sunrise, Eastern Ontario, joined by
Nolan Quinn from Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry.
Stéphane Sarrazin from Glengarry, Prescott, Russell.
And we are having a ball doing this each week. This is, of course, our third episode. We have a very special guest today, Bob Runciman, former leader of the Ontario PC party twice, and, of course, a Canadian senator and a longtime member of provincial parliament here at Queen's Park. So we'll be talking to him about his book, From Mad Dog to Senator, a little bit later. But first, let's talk about what was going on in the constituencies of Eastern Ontario in this past week. Nolan, let's start with you. You popped into my constituency.
I popped into yours, I popped into Stéphane's. He wasn't there, but I was still there. So I went to all the legions. We were talking about the Soldiers' Aid Commission, just trying to get the awareness out. It's been around, as you're well aware, for over 100 years, and we just wanted to make sure the Legion executive were aware of it. So went through your riding, went through Stéphane's riding, Steve Clark's riding as well. So it was a great tour of all the legions, and the awareness campaign. I think it's going to pay dividends because ultimately most of the executive weren't aware of it. So
yeah, so you met with, when you were in my constituency, at the Barrhaven Legion, which I've been a member of for many years, one of the fastest growing legions in all of Canada, and you got to meet with the Veteran Services Officer, a number of the past presidents, and a number of the people in the protocol, because they were looking for more support for our veterans, particularly our Afghan veterans who don't realize that they're eligible for this. So want to talk a little bit about those?
definitely. So the Veterans Affairs, the Soldiers' Aid Commission, it ultimately used to be just for World War I, World War II vets, and it's been expanded to anyone that's done basic training and has been released in that regard. So yeah, going to the Barrhaven one, 750 active members at that Legion was quite impressive. Yeah, it was a force to be reckoned with in that regard. So just trying to get the awareness out, because Veterans Affairs Canada, most of the Legion executive are well aware of the grants that are available there. But with the carbon tax and the cost of living crisis that we're in right now, upwards of $2,000 every 12 months is eligible to veterans and their spouses and their dependents. So it was a great tour, great to recognize the efforts and the sacrifices of the Legion members and our veterans. So we had some good conversations. It was a really great tour, and to tour all the Legions, to see each individual Legion and some of the strengths that they bring to the table was great.
Exactly.
I hope they mentioned that their local MPP had reached out to them. Or?
Yes, and they said he was amazing too.
Oh, yeah.
good.
Well, we all know
He was
you're
stellar.
amazing, Stéphane. We all know. Listen, it was a big week for you. You represented Canada in Greece to talk about the Francophonie. Yes. Then, of course, a very prominent resident of Van Cleek Hill was bestowed with an incredible honor this past week as well, the first Francophone female lieutenant governor in Edith Dumont. How important is it for you in your constituency to see someone like Edith rise to prominence as the lieutenant governor, the first Francophone Ontarian to do so? After, of course, you've just gone and represented Canada as a Franco-Ontarian at that parliamentary, meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like, I've read a little bit about Edith Dumont, and I thought I knew a little bit about her, but when she said that she's actually was born in Valleyfield, and she actually, the first time she moved in the province was in my riding in the small town of Van Cleek. I said, wow, we're really the center of the Francophonie de l'Ontario.
Oui.
So that was nice to hear, and quite the ceremony. I have to admit, it's the first time
beautiful.
I attend a ceremony like that, and it was quite something. And of course, many Franco-Ontarians were here to celebrate that.
Especially from our communities.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
from the Ottawa region, and she's been in the education system. She's been working with the Université Ontario Français, so that's it's all good. I mean, and listening to her, how passionate she is, I think she'll be doing a great job.
Yeah, and she had a number of people. For example, Madeleine was here.
Yes.
Madeleine, of course, a longtime member of provincial parliament. Elise Bourgeois from the Cité Collégiale, and then a number of other people that sort of serve in our community at the Montfort, on the National Capital Commission, and our school boards. They were all here, and it really was like a homecoming for us, who we really never get to see a lot of people from Eastern Ontario when we're at Queen's Park.
And I think it's going to be great because we might have the presence of the Lieutenant Governor more in Eastern Ontario, because that's a region, So
Yeah,
let's hope so, right?
Yeah, let's hope so.
Yeah, so anything else that happened in your constituencies? I know for me, a big thing that I did with Stan Cho this past week was opening a new long-term care facility, groundbreaking actually, for Southbridge, which is going to be not very close to my house. in the area. Of course, I was happy to have you, Michael Parsa, come in and speak to my Legion, of which I'm a member, as I said. And then Prab Sakari, our transportation minister, also came to Ottawa to talk about some bridge replacements on Highway 417, so that we have a better corridor. Were there anything else that set off in your mind how proud you were to be part of a government that's investing in our communities?
For sure, and we had a commercial expo in Hawkesbury last weekend, and it was great to meet
Great photos, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We met with thousands
He's
of people.
very photogenic.
Thanks, Nolan. So we met with thousands of people, and honestly, I haven't heard anything negative about our government. Everybody's happy with what we're doing, and of course, it's the perfect opportunity to tell them more, about what we're doing, because sometimes people don't know exactly, everything we're doing, especially with the economy and everything, like bringing business back to Ontario. So it was a great opportunity with the Chamber of Commerce of Hawkesbury, meeting with people. So I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to more in my riding. We had one in Rockland a couple of months ago, early this summer.
Cool.
So it's nice, really nice to be.
I'm sure you're like me, though. You hear a lot about affordability, right? And
Yeah,
I'm
why
very
not?
proud that we've extended the gas tax cut
Oh, I
until
know,
the
yeah,
end of
that's
June.
very
And I
popular.
think that I've heard a lot. That's going to help a lot of people in that regard. So affordability everywhere. Everywhere we go, people are worried about food, paying the rent, the electricity costs. So we can't beat around the bush about this. The elephant in the room is the carbon tax. The carbon tax is increasing our inflation across Ontario, across Canada, and ultimately I'm hearing it. So I've heard from our constituents that, keep on that push, keep talking about the carbon tax and keep driving it home. For sure.
And I had a lot of health care last week, and so I was meeting with a group of nurse practitioners who want to bring a nurse practitioner-led clinic to Ottawa. Although it'll be in the East End, they do have plans to sort of create hubs in the West End. And of course, mental health is something I work with a lot, and I last week had the opportunity to be with St. John Ambulance, and they gave me this pin, but also a medal for my work on mental health. So so I was able to wear it actually on Remembrance Day with my other medal, and so I was pretty honored about that. But at the same time, there's still so many needs in our growing communities, with a growing population and with high stress. The need to put more resources into our mental health units and into our primary care.
And Nolan, you haven't talked about your CHIO, you were at CHIO with Minister
Yes.
Parsa.
Yeah,
That
the
was great.
one door for care. Yes.
Fun fact, I was the first person to announce that as Minister of Community and Social Services. Then the second person to announce that was Marilee Fullerton,
Nice.
who was the Minister of Community and Social Services. And then the third person to bring in the unveiling, of course, was current Minister Parsa, but you are the parliamentary secretary. So
Through two of those announcements.
So isn't that nice that that CHIO actually has the imprint from our caucus?
Agreed. No, and CHIO does such great work. Obviously, I have young children of my own, but to see the video of the One Door for Care and how inclusive it's going to be, and it almost doesn't look like a hospital. It's got the gym to be able to work out. It's got some terraces so that they can go outside and get some exercise out there. I was quite impressed. It's going to be an asset for all of Eastern Ontario, and I know it already is, but that expansion.
You could be a learning specimen because you're always breaking something.
I could be, yeah. For some reason, I never made it to CHIO as a child, but in my later years,
They're grateful.
definitely, yes, I've saved them a lot of time and effort. But in my teenage years, I've had a lot of injuries, as we've talked about before. I think this arm's longer or shorter. I'm not too sure what it is. I must have hit my head this week, but yeah, I've broken my collarbone and shoulder as well. But no, CHIO is an amazing resource for our communities in Northern Ontario as well.
Yeah, and before we wrap, because we were going to get Bob Runciman on, what about you and your experience with CHIO? Did you ever have to take a child there?
No, I was never there with my children, and thank God, as good as the service is, you don't want to be there, but I've been visiting, and we did some announcement in the past, and it's a great, institution, we say we have something like 5,000 children in the region, but of course, it serves the Quebec side also, so.
Yeah.
No, I think we're so lucky when it comes to hospital in the region, like Hawkesbury Hospital and all the hospitals in Ottawa, they're offering a great service.
Well, thanks, guys. I know we've got our special guest, Bob Runciman's going to come in, and we're going to do a one-on-one, but ladies and gentlemen, again, my two colleagues, Nolan, Quinn, and Stéphane Sarrazin, have been doing great work for Eastern Ontario, and we're looking forward, obviously, to a one-on-one with the Honourable Bob Runciman, former Canadian Senator, retired, former member of this legislature for, I think, 7, 8, 9 10 terms, I don't know. He was here when I first got here, and he had been here forever before that. And of course, he was the leader of our party in the legislature on more than one occasion, on 2 occasions, as well as our House leader. So looking forward to that as we come right back. Hi, we're back with Sunrise Eastern Ontario. Of course, Bob, this is the where the sun begins to rise first in Ontario, which is what we're talking about. I've got with me my good friend Bob Runciman, the honourable former retired senator who used to be right here in the Ontario legislature, 2-time leader of our party and House leader. He was a significant mentor to me when I first got elected in 2006, and he has just written a book called From Mad Dog to Senator, which surprised me because you used to say to me that you were Mad Dog to Mellow Mutt. So how are you doing, Bob? And you want to talk to our viewers about your book and the experience going through the book, and we can have a little chat from there.
Yeah, well, thanks, Lisa. Great to be with you. And I was looking at a picture recently of John Tory and I walking you into the legislature when your first day. No, the book really came about as a form of therapy for me after my wife passed away, and I was having a difficult time, and I was seeing a psychologist, and she was a great lady from the Ottawa area, and every once in a while I would tell her one of these stories out of my political past, and she would always say, "Bob, this is so fascinating." She loved the stories, and she said, "You've got to write a book, you've got to write a book." And I just, shrug it off, and then she finally said, "Bob, why don't you give it a try? It could be very good therapy for you." And so I took that advice and started working on it. I hand wrote everything.
Wow.
I hand wrote everything, and I run it by a few people, and they'd say, "Don't you remember doing this, or don't you remember that?" So they would give me memories as well that I would then go back home and handwrite all of the things that I'd forgotten about. And then ultimately I got a firm in Toronto. I tape recorded the whole thing, sent it up to them. They typed it all out.
Oh, wow.
And paid for it. Then they put it on Word, so then I could work it on the computer at that point.
Yeah.
But the book is tells people really how I got into politics, and how I got interested really in my teenage years. Got involved with the young PCs, and got married at a very young age, and how lucky I was to marry the woman I married.
At 21 years old.
21, we were both
Yeah.
21 years of age. And I ran for council a couple of times. I was really into politics and got defeated both times. And took a six-year hiatus from politics, and it was really good for me. I became a union president. I got involved in a number of environmental organizations. I suffered a very serious industrial accident, and we lost our son to cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So there are all these sort of life-forming events, which made me, I think, better prepared at age 30 when I ran again and was successful and never looked back.
Yeah.
45 years later, and so I think I talk about some of the things that a lot of people wouldn't be interested in terms of what I was able to do as a city councillor, and to build up my reputation as someone who got jobs done and really cared about the people he was representing. And then the opportunity came along to run for the provincial seat, and then I spent 29 years around this place.
You did.
And served in a lot of different roles. I served under 3 different premiers, 8 leaders actually, and 3 of them.
I'm coming close to how many?
Yeah, that's true.
It's been a bouncy little castle for us.
That's true, and then I was contacted by Prime Minister Harper's office to see if I would have an interest in being appointed to the Senate. And what do you think I said?
Well, I was here around those
bet.
times, yeah.
And so that happened, and so I spent close to 8 years in the Senate, and I'm really proud of my time there. I set a record, I'm told, of getting 4 pieces of legislation through the Senate, and then 3 of them through the Parliament, and they're now Canadian law, 3 pieces of legislation in a little under 8 years. Most members of Parliament, they're lucky if they get 1 bill passed in
Well, same around
20
here, right?
years. Yeah, same around here. And It's a different system for senators. They don't operate on a lottery system.
Yeah.
If they pass in the Senate, they immediately go into, I think it's spot 20 in the House of Commons.
Yeah.
So your chances of getting your legislation debated, very, very good
Yeah.
in a 4-year term for
Wow.
sure. And, you know, when you look back at Queen's Park, I mean, I spoke a little bit at my book launch in Toronto about some of the things that were pretty darn foolish. This is not a dry political book. There's a lot of fun in it. I think there's a few surprises in it about some of the things that
Mike Harris is in it.
Mike Harris is really in it, and you know, it's just
And Tim Hudak's in it.
Tim Hudak's in
Yeah.
it. You know, I talk about all of the leaders I worked with, and probably go into more detail with respect to Mike, and probably John Tory, and some of the controversies I got into when I was first elected with Bill Davis and my opposition to purchasing a big share of Suncor Oil Company. I didn't think it was something the Conservative government should be doing, and it got me in a lot of hot water. But I think it opened a lot of doors for me with the vast majority of small C Conservatives who shared my view.
Yeah.
And you know, go on to other controversies. I've said things like I had the Belinda controversy.
Oh,
You
I
were
remember
around. You were around then. You know, and when I was Solicitor General, we had the Ontario Canada's First Boot Camp, and then there was a big escape the night before the grand opening. And I talk about all of that and how it, and again, I talk about the good luck I've had in my life. And I talked about Jeanette earlier. I think in terms of a political spouse,
Yeah, she
I
was
was
something.
enormously lucky.
Always by your side.
Always by my side. And she was a voice of wisdom. You know, I talk about the fact that when Mike Harris ran against Diane Cunningham for the leadership of the party, and I ended up, Mike and I were great friends, but I went to support Diane because I thought Mike was too much like me and too much like Frank Miller, small town guy, you know, and we needed somebody who was more urban and having a fresh face, a female, as our leader. And it was a very tough time for both Mike and I when I had to tell him that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he proved me wrong. He became one heck of a great premier. And,
Well, and probably one of the best Canadian leaders in our generation.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And he always had this, even when we were serving in the Miller cabinet together, he sat beside me, and he always had this sort of air of confidence, you
Yeah.
know. And he fit right into that leadership role like a hand in a glove.
Yeah.
And was not, you know, some leaders can be pretty, you know, lofty and not. Mike was always down to earth, and a great guy to come into the caucus room after a session and have a beer with the boys. And,
No, one of the things I wanted to everyone to know, because you did walk me into the legislature when I first got
Yeah.
you were a legend in Eastern Ontario. You were a hero of mine for sure. You see my daughter grow up from infancy to
Yeah.
now she's 18. Of course, Steve Clark is one of my best friends. He
Yeah.
worked in your office. We're all very close. And your wife Jeanette was so integral to everything. And you served both in government and opposition. And one thing you said last night was with your time with Mike Harris, and it really resonated with me, having spent a lot of time in opposition too, was how close you become with your colleagues
Yeah.
and the sense of purpose you have
Yeah.
when you're in opposition and you're building something
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And just wanted to talk a little bit about that, because you know our federal counterparts are in opposition. You know, tomorrow's opposition is always today's opposition is always the next government,
Yeah.
and sometimes people lose sight of that when they just come in with government. But I just like that insight too.
Yeah, I think I was responding to a question. What do you think was the best time of your political life and most enjoyable? And I had to say the 90 to 95. There was only 16 of us, and I think in the 90 election maybe we did jump up to 20. I can't recall the exact number. It was a pretty small group, and we were back in the north wing of the legislature. And we got to know each other. We socialized together, and we built up this team spirit. And it wasn't just the elected folks. There's everybody working in this section of the building. If we socialized, it wasn't just the MPPs doing their thing. We drew everybody in.
Yeah.
And you became part of the group, part of the team, and you had this sense of purpose. Everybody had it.
Yeah.
I feel that was the case, and then we developed the Common Sense Revolution out of that. And I'm not sure how many of us thought we really had a shot at getting back into government. We're all gung ho and
Bad news bears.
Yeah, because we were in third party.
Yeah.
Then we got some hope because I think that's the point when we had 2 by-elections. I think I could be wrong on the timing of this. Anyway, we had Chris Hodgson join us and David Johnson join us.
Oh, yeah.
2 really capable guys who made significant contributions when we got into government. And but I don't know, it was the most fun too, because we'd do little things in the office, and everybody would come in, and
Yeah.
no, it was just a great time, and at the end of the day, a great sense of accomplishment. And then especially when you see us creeping up in the polls, and then the realistic possibility that, my gosh, we could form government.
Yeah.
And then it happens, and then the tough stuff starts once you get into government and have to deal with the challenges.
What I love also about you, Bob, is, and I wish more people got to see what John Yakubuski and myself, Laurie Scott, got to see under your leadership, both in the House and as House Leader. You also made friends with some other people, like a Jim Bradley, like a Peter Cormos, deans just like you in their own parties, and knew how to elevate being a parliamentarian in the minds of each other and respecting one another. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because, people at home, yes, they're Tories or they're Liberals or they're Democrats, but at some point they just say, I just want the hospital built, or I just want the road built. And they don't care about political stripes. They just want us to get along. And one thing I loved about you is you would give the Liberals heck during question period, but the minute that was over and after you finished your scrum, you were negotiating with those 2 deans to make life better here for MPPs and all of our staff.
Right.
And that's overlooked a lot.
Yeah, and you're right, Lisa. I had great relationships with members of other parties, and Jim and I still communicate, and of course Peter became a great friend. When we started out together, we were both insurance critics, and we did this campaign around the province. Auto insurance was a big issue back then, and I always had a deal with Peter that I spoke first, and then, because he was such an entertainer.
Oh yeah, you never stop him.
No, and if he was first, I'd hate to follow him. I mean, gosh, they'd all walk out, and he'd get up and dance around with the cowboy boots, and no, Jim and I were the only non-NDPers to go to Peter's 20th anniversary up in his riding, and we had a blast, and and that's when I confessed to the NDP audience that I was a former union president.
Oh.
and everybody the rest of the evening would call me Brother Runciman.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, I think they probably had a hard time
As long as they
believing
didn't call you comrade, I guess.
Yeah. So no, it was good working with those guys, and I think we did solve a lot of problems at House Leaders meetings, and we'd find a middle ground, and that's which I don't know if that's around today. I don't.
It's harder, I think. I mean, you see what's happening in the United States. You see what's happening on social media. When I first got elected, in 2006, we didn't have Facebook and Twitter to be there,
That's
and
true.
it riles up people, and I've done it myself, and I don't do it anymore because it's just. It is not great for people's mental health. It's not good for workability here. So I think that there's some strains now. But let's go back to home in Eastern Ontario. You serve with some legends yourself. I mean, you're a legend, in my opinion. Claude Bennett, Norm Sterling, John Baird, Gary Guzzo, a lot of characters there. And, I know you make some friends along the way. As you know, I'm very close. You're very close with Steve Clark and John Yakubuski, as am I. Part of it's proximity. The other part of it is we're kind of similar in nature. We care about the same thing. So do you have any fun or unexpected friendships that you made from the region in terms of your own caucus or in the other parties?
Well, Claude Bennett was, a legend for sure, especially in the Ottawa area. And very early on, Claude kind of took me under his wing. And I don't know if I should say this, but there was another prominent member of our caucus in Eastern Ontario, and they didn't get along too well.
Yeah.
And I think I always thank Claude when Frank Miller became the leader, and I supported Frank, and Claude was a big driver of Frank Miller's campaign. And I always felt that Claude had the ear of Frank Miller. I wasn't a parliamentary secretary, and that's usually a stepping stone to become a cabinet minister. And Bill Davis didn't see fit to put me in as a parliamentary secretary. And yet I went into cabinet as Minister of Government Services in my first term. And that's quite unusual, especially if you haven't been a parliamentary secretary.
Yeah.
And I always gave Claude Bennett credit for that.
Wow.
And part of that was too, he didn't want this other fellow to be in cabinet.
I see. So we're gonna.
I'm not going to mention any names.
I'm just, well, I know who it is. So, but I'm going to have to clip this and send it to Tom Bennett because Tom will love to hear that story. But that's great. So, tell us then, Bob. I know you're short on time, and you've got to go back home, and to do some important work at the St. Lawrence Parks Commission. And I am so grateful. I used to be your minister, if that was not a reversal of fortunes. But you do a great job there, and you've got assets all the way from Chrysler Farm down to Kingston. You've got that beautiful parkway, and I know you're trying to get the MTO to upload it, but you're doing a great job there. How can people get this book? I mean, there are going to be people that have voted for you, that have admired you, have read about you, have met you in our region, that will want to purchase this book. Okay,
well, thanks for that, Lisa. There is a bookstore in Ottawa. Because it's self-published, I don't get into the Indigos of the world. And there's unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the bookstore on Elgin Street in Ottawa, just on the right-hand side, just not down too far from Parliament Hill. But probably the easiest way to get the book is through Amazon, and you'll get it at Amazon.ca. And you just put my name in and it'll pop up, or from Mad Dog to Senator, if you put that in, you'll get it, and they deliver it within 2 to 3 days. Or you can go on to bobrunciman.com, which is my website, and you can order it through that as well. So that's really the only outlets I have at the moment. I have it in about 6 or 7 independent bookstores in Smith Falls, Perth, Brockville, Graham's Bakery in Kempville, which you know well.
Everybody just go to Graham's Bakery, and everybody can then get like a butter tart or something that's delicious and buy the book. That's a. You should have just led with that, Bob.
So no, and I'm not sure when this is going to be airing, but
it airs on Friday at 9.
Okay, well, on the 25th of November, a great store called River West on King Street in Brockville. Okay. Fantastic store. I'm doing a book signing there from 11:30 till 1:30 or 2. If there's a crowd, I'll just keep going. But we start at 11:30 at River West, King Street, Brockville. So hopefully if people want a signed book, that's the place to be.
Yep. Any parting message for all of your fans, including me?
Well, I really appreciate it, Lisa, seeing you and so many of my former colleagues last night at my Toronto book launch, and and the fun we had together, working together. And I know what a great contribution you've made over the years, and you've gone through some struggles, and people appreciate that you've come out even better at the end of this, and I know you're going to continue to make a great contribution, not just for your own riding, but for the province as a whole.
Thank you. And that is why I love Bob Runciman. As tough as he has been in the House, I've always seen the kind side of him and this big, gigantic heart. I'm really excited about this new book, From Mad Dog to Senator. You can get it on Amazon, or you can visit one of the bookstores he's mentioned. Or you can simply just go and do yourself a big favor and go to Graham's Bakery in Kempville, and that will be great. So for this edition of Sunrise Eastern Ontario, I'm Lisa MacLeod. This is Bob Runciman, and on behalf of Nolan and Stéphane, we want to thank you, and we'll see you again next week.